Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone. Today, we're having an amazing session called Payment Trends for Sustainable Energy and Lifestyles. I'm your host, Chair Michael KK, and our guest speaker is Adiya. Um, and the content of today, we're going to be having my colleague Essay talk to you all about Energize Black. For anyone who is new that doesn't know what we are doing or what we are about, she's gonna explain some more. Then we'll then get deeply into the session. So that I hand over to Essay to introduce Energize Black quickly.
Thanks, Emeka. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we all had lovely days. If this is your first time or first session or contact with Energize Black, we offer you a warm welcome. It's a pleasure to have you join us today. And if you're returning or familiar with the community, welcome back. It's lovely to have you as well. A couple of things to know about us. We launched in 2024 to support Black talent in the UK energy sector to start, grow, and thrive. So we provide a community of people with similar backgrounds and career goals, just supporting ourselves, people from ethnic or minority backgrounds. And interestingly, we're UK's first and largest network of Black professionals in the energy sector, which is something big. So we're happy that you're able to join us today. We have over 670 members. Um, oops, slide.
Hold on a minute, I'm sorry.
With over 670 members, we have a strong mix of students, professionals, and just like-minded people in the energy sector from Black, British heritage, Caribbeans, and also people from sub-Saharan Africa. So if you belong to any of these, you will feel welcome right in the community. And over the course of 21 months, we have partnered with 15 organizations, including OVO, ACOM, Oakland Consulting, Smart DCC, to mention a few. I know some of us would be familiar with this organization. We've also hosted about 15 plus national events, including Black History Month industry panels, career tours with some of the top schools in the UK, just helping students get sensitized into the roles that are available to them in the energy industry. So it's been a good run so far. We've had a couple of industry recognitions as well. Earlier this year, we were nominated for National Diversity Awards at the National Diversity Awards and also at the Energy Storage Awards. We are highly commended with the Award of Diversity and Inclusion. Next slide, please. Yeah, and in Energize Black, we have three major thematic areas. We have Get Hired, Swift, and Collab Quest. Interestingly, Get Hired is pioneering this webinar today. So we have the Career Hub, the Market Insight team, and we also have the Job Support team. So in the Get Hired team, we are basically promoting and preparing Black talent to great job opportunities in the energy industry rather. Next slide, please. Awesome. So like I mentioned before, we have a reservoir of subject matter experts where people within the community can draw resources, exchange ideas, insights, just getting up to speed into what's new, what's trending, and how we should be upskilling ourselves to place ourselves better in our careers. We have 60% of us work in renewables, climate finance, policy and consulting, solar, batteries, wind, etc. In case any of these areas interest you. And like I mentioned before, we have 670 plus members. So if you're looking to grow your network, meet people from different industries that you have not even thought of, this is the right place for you to be. And some of our members include the Energy Institute, BP, National Grid, to mention a few. Next slide. Yeah. Yes, a couple of highlights that I've not mentioned before. So we've trained 100 professionals on different technical in-demand skills and leadership skills so far. We've helped 20 members, 20, you heard that right, secure new jobs in energy and climate, which is a very big one for us to see people within the community getting roles. We've launched 2 professional track mentorship programs, conducted over 100 CV reviews and interview preps for professionals and members of our community. Also, we have 70 plus volunteers and counting, collaborated with 20 plus partners, like I mentioned before, and also our social media presence has grown to over 2,000 subscribers. So we have a booming community of like-minded people. Yeah, awesome. I will pass it back to Emeka to introduce our guest speaker for today, and hopefully you enjoy the session. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Essay. I hope everyone is acquainted now with Energize Black. Without wasting our time, I'll be introducing Adiya. She's our guest speaker. She's a seasoned payment strategist with over 15 years of experience helping financial institutions and businesses grow card portfolios, design inclusive payment solutions, and embed sustainability into their operations. As vice president, co-leading a payments consulting team in Toronto, she partners with North American clients to build financial systems that are both profitable and purposeful. Her work is driven by a deep commitment to expanding financial inclusion, supporting small businesses, and fostering sustainable growth across the payments ecosystem. Adia's expertise spans strategy development, portfolio optimization, and inclusive product design, making her a trusted advisor to organizations shaping the future of finance. Beyond her professional role, Adiya is the founder of Muse Origins, a passion project that celebrates African art and culture. She's also an avid cafe explorer, photographer, and reader, often found jotting down her thoughts on the evolving payments landscape. So she's an all-rounder basically. I welcome you all to Adia's session.
All right, my turn.
Yep. Welcome, Adia. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak
Thank-
to us today. We look forward to listening to everything you have to offer us.
Thanks everyone, and thanks for having me for sure. I'm really excited to spend these 45 minutes with you. I will talk us through some trends, and then, of course, I think between us and me and Emeka, we go back and forth on some questions, I believe, and then, of course, everyone is open to ask questions. But I think this is going to be an interesting angle, and I don't know if anyone has actually thought through the intersection between payment and energy. There are two things that a lot of people don't really like put together, but it's an interesting one for us to go through, and we can talk through it right now. We can go to the next slide. Preaching to the choir here, but we're going to talk about sustainable energy and how payments plays a role in, promoting that. And when we say sustainable energy, of course, everyone knows we're talking about energy sources that are long-term, don't deplete resources, and obviously have minimal environmental impact, right? But one key, and maybe one of the first issues people come to when they start looking at how to use sustainable energy sources is just that accessibility in terms of how much they need to pay to get started, to do that first installation, to make upgrades to their home, right? To start engaging in sustainable energy. And the way that payment is structured puts it in a very good way to be able to provide that accessibility to people. And also, not just accessibility, but if you even look at payments, you can go to the next slide, Emeka. But if you look at payments, it's two really interesting things about it, actually. One is you actually never really think about the payment industry or even paying. Like it's a core part of everyday life. It's something everyone does every single day in society, right? But you never actively think about it. It's just there. And maybe the only time you think about it is when you're not able to pay when you want to pay for something, right? So it's really ubiquitous, and you actually have no idea how ingrained it is in society. It literally makes the world go round, but no one ever thinks about it. It's just invisible. The second thing is it's such a good connector of people, of businesses as well. So just imagine you go to the corner store and you buy something. Just that one transaction, maybe you buy with your wallet or you buy with the card. Just that one transaction has touched at least four different people. It has touched you, your bank, the store's bank. And imagine doing this at scale globally, not just in the UK or in Europe, like transferring money, buying something online. It's just such a big scale. So it's really truly a network. It's a huge connector of people and businesses. And because of this inherent characteristic it has for connection And because it's such an invisible part of life, it's actually a very good influence into like how humans act. And so when you think about how do I promote the use of sustainable energy sources, payments plays a big role in that. And we will talk through, so even before we talk, to just encourage you that if you've not thought of a career where you're intersecting between payments and energy, this is probably a good thought starter to say, okay, what are the I want to be an energy professional, but a place in payments is also something that you should also think about in terms of expanding where you want to grow your career. 6 ways that payments is influencing energy, and even not just energy, like even overall sustainable living and just your lifestyle in general. And we'll talk through them. The first, yeah, you can go to the next slide. The first is installment payments. I think this is obvious because the cost of installing and engaging in energy sources is high, right? I think when I was doing some research in the EU itself, 16% of people are actually experiencing energy poverty. And even if you're not, I think last year, people in the UK were spending 10% of their income on energy. That is extremely high, right? And so even think of this and then think of even the extra amount that you're going to spend in terms of installing your solar panels, installing your batteries and all of that. And so payment is a good one because I'm sure if anyone has engaged in e-commerce or just buying in general, you see the rise of buy now, pay later, where you buy something and then you're able to pay in installments. This is one trend that has really caught on, and it has caught on a lot as well in the energy sector because, for example, Home Tree Finance here, you go to their website, try to buy any solar equipment, buy any equipment to retrograde your home. And right there, you can start splitting your payments right from the start, right? Rather than having to pay in bulk. And so this is something that increases accessibility to anyone, not even just low-income families, obviously, but anyone who needs to budget. This is a tool that is absolutely critical for ensuring access when it comes to using sustainable energy. I think the second way this plays out is pay as you go, but I think we see this more in markets like Africa, where there are lots of off-grid, where a lot of communities are off-grid. But we also see this model like just playing out in the UK in terms of that buy now, pay later a lot more than the pay as you go. Still, even in pay as you go, there are people like NPAL who are, if you do a search on NPAL, you see that they also have you pay as much as you use and as you're going along so that you're not overpaying. But even those are coming up a little bit. But when you think about ensuring access in terms of making it cheaper to engage in solar energy and other sustainable energy sources, buy now, pay later is a big trend that the payment industry as a whole has enabled to make it possible. It seems really easy, but a lot goes on behind the scenes to make that possible. Because previously, before, to get any financing, there's a lot of things that go into underwriting to make sure that you're good to get a loan. But that buy now, pay later process has just kind of streamlined it by using data, additional data, by using technology, sometimes by using AI. So it seems easy, but in the back saying, don't underestimate the way it has, played out. And payments and everyone engaged, especially fintech, working in payments is a big part of this. The second trend we want to talk through is green cards. This is also an interesting one on the next slide. Yeah, this is also an interesting one and one that it is also fairly common, but we've seen it go well and we've seen it go wrong. But this is definitely a trend that more and more people are engaging in, especially when it comes to debit cards. And this is a particularly powerful one because literally everyone in the UK holds a debit card. And so banks, card issuers are seeing this as a way to help change behavior or help reward more sustainable behavior by rewarding more sustainable behavior. So when I see green cards, we see people engage in this in different ways. One, it could be even the way the card itself is made. So not just plastic, but using maybe recycled plastic or using renewable sources like wood is one way. But most importantly, even it's the case where you're able to use your card, and based on maybe some spend thresholds that are set, you're able to get rewarded, or the way where you spend, you're able to get rewarded. So we see a lot of people like Bank in Netherlands, Amalgamated in the US, Future Card in the US, who have all released debit cards that actually reward you. So they would literally give you some cash back if they see that you spent on public transport, or if they see that you spent on an EV charging for your EV vehicle, or they've seen that you've bought equipment related to solar or related to batteries, or even this one I find interesting, but they're able to understand, okay, 1, 2, 3 companies are sustainable companies. They're in some maybe third-party ratings, and they're able to also reward you when you spend with those companies, right? So it's actually a big driver where, a lot of people say they want to be more sustainable in their lifestyle, but there is that disconnect between what they say and what they do, mainly because a lot of times engaging with this is more expensive. And so this trend is actually really interesting because it actually gives you cash back when you do the things that are more sustainable, especially use things like renewable energy sources. So in a bank, there are people who are developing these value propositions. There are people who are, setting up all of these rewards that need to be possible, working in the back end to make sure that, for every payment action you make, it's not just a payment that goes through, a lot of data also goes through. And so a lot of work behind the scenes, making sure that as part of that data that goes every time you use your payment product, ESG related data is also appended in there. So it's a trend that's picking up, but there's still more to be done for any payment or energy professional that's working in the scene because of all the data things that need to happen, and even just the economics of it. So if you even do a search to say, green debit cards, interestingly, you find a lot of them started and stopped. Like several have not been successful, and that's because there still needs to be a lot of work to make sure that the economics make sense, because a debit card is such a low margin product, and then you put all of these rewards on it and you start increasing the cost. So even as I say, it keeps happening because lots of people are interested in it, but there's work to be done in this space as well to be able to make sure that we have profitable green cards, whether it's debit or credit. Right? So I personally really like some of these projects that I work on when it comes to thinking through how can the card itself help to change or reward sustainable behavior. The next slide, I think this is the third trend that we're talking through. So this is also an interesting one and goes back to my point about data. And there are a lot of fintech actually that work on this. Many of them, I would say maybe most of them based in Europe, that are working on carbon footprint calculators. Overall, a lot of people recognize that. So let's say UK, 82% of UK adults recognize that to reduce their carbon footprint, they need to play a personal role in that. But literally everyone, if you ask them what exactly is a footprint, that they don't know. how exactly are you going to reduce it? They don't really know exactly, right? Or even how much do they need to reduce it by? And so this trend is an interesting one as well, where the payments industry as well is working a lot with fintech to just make sure that we have as much data to give people the knowledge they need to be able to reduce their carbon footprint. The way this works is, for example, you have a debit card, you go purchase you go purchase fuel with your debit card, for example, and at the back end there is data that says fuel 1 gallon of fuel equals XX amount of carbon emissions, right? And so for every kind of category of things that you purchase, there are estimates of what the carbon footprints of those purchases are. And so you use your card and then you go on the payment, your bank's app, and you can see, oh, you've purchased across this month, across all the purchases you've made. This is the estimation of the amount of carbon that have potentially been emitted, right? And the idea is you're able to see your carbon footprint on the app. Some players also give you education materials on the app about how to reduce your footprint. What potential alternatives could you buy to reduce your footprint? And all of that. So it's meant to help you give you the data you need to make sustainable choices without you having to do much, right? Even as consumers are able to do that. So, for example, Mastercard and Economy have worked together to enable these carbon footprint calculators whenever you use your card. But even businesses, this is a big one for businesses as well, because when businesses also have a role to play, obviously, and a lot of them have targets to around emissions, and they're trying to make more sustainable energy source choices. They're trying to use suppliers that also use more sustainable energy sources. And so platforms like Greenly, Greenway, they actually target businesses to help businesses calculate their footprint every time they make payments to, for example, suppliers and other vendors, right? And so this is one that is a bit more nascent than the other two, but is definitely catching on. And there's just a lot of discussions again about data, because one is granularity, trying to get even deeper to say, okay, not just categories, but are we able to get data about what you bought, where you bought it, to be able to more accurately calculate that footprint? Can we also help people not feel guilty about looking at the amount of carbon that they've emitted? So it's more a positive message that oh, you have this footprint, but these are what you can do to reduce it, versus making them feel guilty that they have the footprint that they have, right? And so this is another sector that has a lot of activity, and especially when it comes to fintech and platform providers. So those are also other interesting potential employers, because they are working through a lot of things on an industry level, on a product design level, on a data compliance level. And so there is a lot of, interesting work to be done in this particular space. Going forward, donations. I think this one is it's relatively intuitive, because, for example, if you've been on a flight, a few airlines do this really well. BA, Lufthansa, I know they do it, but you're going through the flow of making a purchase for your flight, and then a lot of times you could see below, this is the carbon footprint. Do you want to offset the carbon footprint that you're gonna incur from taking this flight? And so you're able to add in, oh, okay, yes, I want to offset it, and then it adds maybe £2 more to your overall bill. That is what the donations for carbon offsetting looks like. The idea is you've made a purchase, you've incurred a certain amount of carbon emissions, and they're giving you the opportunity right in that checkout flow to contribute to a project that's going to offset the carbon that you've emitted, whether it's something as easy as it refers, not easy, but something as straightforward as a reforestation project, or funding fintech that are working on carbon removal projects, for example. And so airlines have started doing this pretty well through their payments checkout flows. We see, I think this is a good one too for you guys to check Stripe. Stripe Climate have been doing a lot of work with this, both enabling this kind of donations for their clients, merchants who use Stripe, as well as even for businesses themselves who want to offset their own carbon. So I'd actually encourage you to do some research on Stripe Climate if you want to get, and people like Adiya who work with a lot of merchants. The Stripe, Adiya, we call them acquirers. They enable businesses accept payments, right? They do the processing and all of that. So there's a big shift in terms of how we can use this feature to, make people live more sustainable lifestyles, make businesses more sustainable as well in terms of, and also find money for fintech who are doing interesting things around carbon and climate. On the next slide, 2 more to go, guys. Embedded payments. This is pretty similar to I think I had mentioned earlier that, you go to Home Tree Finance website and you're able to, through their own website, their platform, you're able to get that financing, that buy now, pay later. So that's what we mean by embedded payments, where you go to an energy provider's website, or you're using their platform, or you're using their app, and you can get interesting financing structures right in their payments, right in their overall platform experience, right? So people like Clover does this, where you go to their site to purchase batteries or to purchase equipment, and right in their flow, you get those financing options. A lot of them are, I think Octopus also, you do the same thing, and it's actually, they don't charge you interest until maybe a certain amount. If you're extending that financing option past a certain amount, so maybe if it's past 4 months, or if it's past the standard 12 months, then you start paying, right? So that makes it a bit easier. But right through the purchase, right through whatever experiences you're having with the payment provider's own platform, you're able to go on there and get those financing options that you need. You don't need a third party. It's that they've worked behind the scenes to make sure that the payments and the financing is embedded into whatever it is that you've been engaging with those energy providers before. And then perhaps the final interesting one that's been catching on, this one is more B2B. It's more for businesses than for consumers. But I think this is maybe one of the most powerful ones, because just overall businesses are such huge emitters. I was looking at, and then this helps resolve an issue where, lots of companies are now required to report their carbon emissions, right? And we all know that the carbon emissions that are done in your supply chain is way more than the ones that you as a business itself emits. And so this trend aims to help kind of green or promote the greening, promote the use of more sustainable energy across the supply chain of a business. And how this works is, typically, I'm a corporation. I would most likely be using a certain platform to make my payments, to handle my invoices, to pay my suppliers, to pay my vendors. Very popular systems are SAP, Taulia, Coupa. These are I would say 80% of businesses, huge businesses, use these platforms, right? And they literally cannot survive without using these platforms to make supplier payments. But the thing here is these big platforms are now collaborating with sustainability rating companies to embed ratings into the platform. And the idea is if they are able to if they make a payment to Emeka and Co., who is a supplier, and they see that from the data that they now have, Emeka has a really good rating when it comes to ESG, maybe because he has been using renewable energy sources, he has been doing a lot of things with waste and pollution. He has really good ratings. And so me as a company who is about to pay Emeka, I can actually reward Emeka for those good ratings by maybe giving some kind of rebates to him, giving some kind of cashbacks, just giving him some kind of reward around payment, around money. Or a really popular reward, for example, is everyone who has those ratings, we're paying you 10 days earlier than I'm paying all my other suppliers, which is a big thing for working capital, right? And so because of those ingestion of the sustainability ratings and all the other data into that payment platform, they're able to make those choices and encourage more of their supply chain to use better and more sustainable energy sources. So all of these kind of working together in terms of overall promoting that those energy source use both with consumers and with businesses. There are, again, this is a trend. All of these are trends. I won't say any of these are like the mainstream of how we do business currently, right? So it's trends that we're getting up to. What we want to see is all of these trends becoming mainstream. But to get there, there's just a lot of work, which is why I'm just really excited about being able to get like energy professionals into these payment spaces, because there's a lot of work that still needs to be done around data, around consumer engagement, around making the business case for investment, and ultimately making all of these more mainstream than it currently is. So looking forward to any questions, looking forward to back and forth in discussions. But these were the 6 I wanted to bring forward.
Well, thank you so much for the insightful session, the trend, everything else. I think I have a few questions before we open it up to like everyone else. So, and just off of what you've just mentioned, you said there are a lot of like things that still need to be done with respect to like data, investment readiness. But I feel like beyond us all here just being like, energy professionals or just looking for jobs, from your point of view, where do you reckon if anyone should want to start an energy startup today, that they can tackle, what parts of like this payments value chain do you reckon that like a unicorn can emerge from your point of view, playing in this space for over a number of years, just to say this vertical here doesn't have like the best of solutions. How do we like bring in a new tech stack to sort of like build a new rail for infrastructure in the space, if you don't mind?
Yeah, if I understand your question, so where if you're an energy professional, or if you're starting up something, where across all of these do I think the biggest like opportunities for growth
Yeah, where do we have any
is that would
gaps that can be monetized?
yeah. The obvious one, the first one I would go to for consumers is buy now, pay later. Honestly, I think there's just so much opportunity, and there's a lot of opportunity to do it even faster and to do it safer, and to just make sure that it's more like people are using it even more responsibly, right? And so I think that is, and also even from all we've seen currently, it's something that is definitely catching on. It started as an option for, if if you have a low income household, you make use of buy now pay later to engage in these more expensive energy sources, right? But what we're saying is it goes even wider than that. Yes, it's a game changer for low income, but the opportunity size is even more than that segment, because even people who can afford it, but they maybe prefer not to just because they want a budget. They're also getting in there. So the opportunity side, the market size is pretty big. And even though I would say the players that are playing on this now, it's catching on maybe more than the other trends, but there's still even more space and there's even more opportunity to innovate from the back end in terms of doing it better. And then from the business side of things, so that's like B2C, and then from the B2B side of things, honestly, I think if you're able to have a solution where you can help a business measure the impact of whatever it is they're doing, you will hit gold. There are lots of people who are trying to do that, but it needs a lot more people working on it. And once you get businesses to be very confident about the data you're using, the impact of whatever products and features they are putting out, I think it would go a long way for even the industry in general. So those two areas are maybe two I would say.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I have another question, which is like centered around what is happening in the UK right about now. I think there's been some tax reforms that will be prevalent till 2031. And in one of them, and I understand you're currently in Canada, but in one of them, they mentioned something about, more taxes for people who typically use EV vehicles or like electric vehicles, basically. From that perspective, how do you reckon like policy sort of like has, any hand in the intersection of payments and then sustainability adoption generally, because now we are seeing people have gone on to buy cars that are electric just so that they can like contribute to whatever sustainability goals that the UK has. But now the government is now turning their back to say, hey, you guys are going to pay even as much. Yeah, like all the charges that were like taken off initially are now being brought back in. So, how do you reckon policies, just for those people that are working in the policy space here in energy, just what they can take away from this sort of conversation going forward?
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's a trend. I think it's a trend we see in North America as well, to be honest, where even right now, all the tax breaks that have been had on EVs, they're gonna go away in maybe a year. And so you see there's a bit of a rush for people to get it before the tax breaks are taken off. But it's gonna get harder. It's going to get overall maybe more expensive to use EV vehicles, even in North America. So I empathize with that. But I think overall, it comes back to that accessibility, right? Like people shouldn't have to pay the extra to be able to also live sustainably. And so where I think anyone who is working on payment and wants to think, I mean, working on in policy and wants to think through payments versus energy and its role in promoting that, there could be opportunities for maybe doing things like how can we get the payment industry to be able to reward people better, for example, if they're making these choices. So even if overall it's more expensive, but there are more interesting rewards, richer rewards that will overall in the long term make a bit more sense financially, right? So if they're able to say, oh, okay, I don't know, for anyone who has used the payment product, this isn't the ideal now, it may not work out this way, but like for everyone who has used a payment product to finance their EV vehicles, maybe they could be entitled to a bit more cashback or a bit more rewards or some sort of like or maybe access to some free tools or some discount at certain merchants, right, to make the running costs of using their EV vehicle smaller. So I think for payments, there is one thing that's catching on, people are doing more and more, is just that whole building ecosystems of other merchants that can provide rewards and help with loyalty. And so there may be a role to play in terms of policy making it easier to build those connections that can help reward you or maybe make the running costs of your EV vehicles or your solar equipment cheaper. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. I think that just throws more light to everything, and it's also comforting to know that people in North America are also facing the same issue. Okay, then I think the next question that I have here, and again, before we continue, if you have any questions, we have the Slido page for you to throw in your questions. But again, this is a platform for you to be an all-round professional, so feel free to, use the the Zoom tools to raise your hand, and we'll call you up to ask your question, because like the more that would just help you more. But at the same time, I think the question I want to ask next is about affordability. Do you reckon that, from the context of education for sustainable solutions, and as well as the affordability of these products, do you think that, like, if people are not aware, and even if it's the cheapest thing on the market, like, how do you reckon that, like, we can drive more adoption beyond even just saying, oh, this is cheaper, or the government is bringing more incentives, or there are tax breaks, in quote and unquote, in that sense? How do you reckon that, like, we can push for more adoption globally?
Yeah, so this is a good question too, and maybe many people don't realize, but your bank as an issuer, when they issue you a product, they have a lot of people don't do this really well, but the people who do it really well add that education bit of things in it too. So it's not best practice to just issue a payment product and that's it. There is a lot of work that needs to happen to educate people or about how to use it, responsible ways to use it. What other tools do we have that could complement the use of that product? And so what we also try to work on, we do a lot of work. I do a lot of work around like consumer engagement to make sure that you're sending communications, you're using your mobile app as well as a channel to give like tidbits and education and awareness and
Yeah.
information about how to use different things and like what's even available. And so the banks, payment providers who do it really well really utilize email, really utilize in-app to be able to push, some education around awareness and responsible use. So I think that's a channel that would be great. It needs to be optimized, but it's a really good channel when people who have done it have seen really good results, right?
Well, thank you. I think that even gives us a lot of ideas as Energized Black to even start maybe a bite-sized TikTok or whatever, educating our communities about energy adoption in the UK and how it applies to them. So we, the Market Insights team, would also take note of that and see how we would incorporate that into our next few goals for next year. I think, I don't think anybody has indicated questions here, but I would prioritize those who are here to probably raise their hands and ask questions. I don't know, is anyone's hands up?
I,
Otherwise,
I see, I just went to the slide and I see some questions. I think we've answered some, but I see one around how do you reckon AI will change the scene for ESG and all things green? Um, different ways, obviously a topical a topical issue, but I think different ways. One is even to our point about education, there's a lot of talk around using AI to get even more personalized education, right? And education that is gamified but that is highly relevant to how you live your life. And so I think that is the more personal it is, I think the better. And that's one good way that's very immediate that I see having it. Also in payments, there's a lot of discussions around, I don't know if you've heard this buzzword word, but it's called agentic pay. That is
yeah.
using, how you go on ChatGPT and you do research. So we envisage a time that lots of Visa, MasterCard are working on this, where you ask on ChatGPT, you're like, please find me the cheapest solar equipment near me, and then
I
it comes
already,
up with different things,
yeah,
right?
I
And then you're
already
like,
saw
please
that
buy
prompt
this.
on my ChatGPT to tell me, like, you're asking me
There
to
you go.
purchases on them. I'm like, when did this one start? So it happened like yesterday.
Exactly. There you go. And so I think it will be a really good tool to be able to research your options, for renewable energy, but also make payments and make payments most efficiently. So you could be like, who has the best rates? Just make the payments there. Who is able to offer me buy now, pay later now? I think that would be a game changer for sure in terms of how we use AI.
Okay. I think I have one question around switching costs because I feel like that's something that's like a very big problem, like in the UK, firstly. And from my experience researching this space, it's more about, oh, you want to go from whatever you're using right about now, maybe to a better provider, which is on the back of what you've just said, where you've researched using like agentic payment solutions from these higher language learning models and whatever they're called. So in this instance, how do you reckon that like, this switching costs will be like, because sometimes you want to switch and it's even more expensive to even switch, the hassle of even switching in and of itself, having to like break a contract that is currently ongoing and how all these things are structured. How do you reckon that like people can like manage this type of stuff?
That's a hard one because even reflecting around switching, there are some of these trends that even make switching hard. So, for
Mhm.
example, embedded payments, right? It makes you even more ingrained into like what the ecosystem of the energy provider. Buy now, pay later. You're already engaged with the energy provider for the next, I don't know, 6 months or 12 months. So like how do you switch when you have all of those? So I think switching it around, it's we need to encourage more people to even provide services in the industry, right? And so all of these in terms of these trends help with customer stickiness. Those are selling points for the business, right? It's like a balance between what are the selling points for the business versus what is the selling point for the individual person. So it's hard to really say, oh, how can we tackle switching costs per se. So I do acknowledge I don't have a particular answer for that, but I do acknowledge like it's a balance where things that make you sticky with the energy provider may not necessarily may be a downside for the consumer. But I think one thing now that I think about it, there is a very nascent trend around even using things like smart contracts using blockchain, right? So that's also something, blockchain is something that the payment industry is working a lot on. And if, for example, you have a contract that has specific rules and maybe one side of it, maybe the payment provider, the energy provider is not meeting the rules of those contracts. I can imagine something like blockchain making it easier to break the contract and make it easier to switch, right? Because if both parties are not adhering to the rules that have been coded, then we can have it easily coded that the contract stops and I can automatically go to another provider. So I think that's an interesting use case for all the new things that we're seeing with blockchain in terms of making traceability and smart contracting and smart rules and programmable payment rules and all of that. So I think space to watch, but that's a good one, Emeka.
Okay, thank you. I think there's this final question just for sake of time, or maybe not, if anybody hasn't raised their hands, but there's this thesis or assumption that the backbone of the payment industry has a lot of emissions in and of itself, right? So you're talking about the data centers, you're talking about the networks, the servers. Yes, they facilitate transactions across the board, across the world, but we can also deny the effects that they also have in and of itself. So how do you reckon that like we can tackle problems without creating bigger problems? And I don't know if you get where I'm driving at. So like how do we reckon that we
Yeah.
without creating bigger ones and just ensuring that we genuinely meet the mark for a sustainable future that we're all trying to achieve?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The payment industry also is a big emitter, like even from the amount of cards that are in the market and being created like every day to
Yeah.
all the data centers, like there's a lot of data being moved and being stored. So it's a lot of energy. And I think one way is they've also been quite vocal about the targets that they have. So having their own like sustainability targets, environmental, social, that they need to meet, and reporting that and certifying their achievements is a big one. So for example, as an example, MasterCard has like it's called a Priceless Planet Coalition, where they're like, for us, we are big emitters. We're going to be offsetting our carbon footprint in reforestation projects across the world. And they're going to be helping their clients also um, give their clients the chance to also fund those reforestation projects. So they have that goal. And another one I remember now is even, I think MasterCard made an announcement a couple of years ago that by 2028, they will stop, everyone who is issuing a MasterCard will stop using single-use plastic for the MasterCard. If you search it, you'll see the announcement. And so being bold and doing things like, I believe Visa is also doing similar stuff, right, around carbon offsetting and around reporting their goals. And so being bold and also doing that and then enabling and giving those kinds of mandates to their clients as well to be able to do that, I think is a big way that the payments industry overall can help make sure that they're also reducing their own emissions.
Okay, and I think, does anyone have any question? Again, I'm sure trying to be conversant. Um, yeah, if there are no questions, I'm just gonna ask one more. So in terms of like other emerging markets, economies, how do you reckon that we can bring them up to speed such that I know that they don't exactly have like most legacy infrastructure right about now? How do we get them up to speed such that like they are like already meeting the developed markets where they should meet them without necessarily disrupting anything, as it were, because there's not like the legacy infrastructure already existing, if you get where I'm coming from, as
Um,
payments and sustainability.
So if I get your question right, though, I think this is where fintech has a really, really big role to play.
Yeah.
A lot of the bigger companies. So for example, using MasterCard as an example again, they have an incubator, they have an incubation, will I say, service or something, and every year there's a different cohort, and they actually have cohorts across different themes. And one of those themes is actually climate and sustainability. And so being able to like incubate a lot of this fintech and enable them to like grow in those markets, and then they can use like really easy technology like APIs. You can use mobile to be able to leapfrog and like do a lot of really interesting things. So honestly, I think fintech is literally the future, and it's going to be the driver of all of these trends and more.
Okay. Thank you. Someone just dropped a question in the group. He mentioned, a man says, how do we ensure these payment-based ESG tools drive real emissions reduction rather than becoming another layer of greenwashing, like South Pole had problem in the deforestation project? I don't know if that's clear as a question, but
It's clear, and to be honest, greenwashing is one of the challenges, and is one of the things where a lot of these providers, especially if they're not fintech, they're really afraid of greenwashing. So it's one of the things that hold them back from doing even more with these trends. But I think certifications and even awareness, guidance, and just making sure that whatever they're doing is a core part of the value and the normal business of the provider is one. And then having really strong certification processes is a big one. And I know across some of those trends, especially the ones that have to do with data, like the supply chain trend that we talked about last, that's a big one where they're trying to work through in terms of making sure that all of these data sources are actually certified. So you're right, it's a barrier, and hardly anything can go really well or fast without the certification being in place.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for the brilliant answers to the questions. Thank you so much for the trends, the session. It was really insightful. I learned a whole lot. As a matter of fact, we already have like next goals for our market insights team where we'll try to incorporate bite-sized video tools to educate our communities. So this was really a productive session for us. I see a question from Salam. I think we will just have to answer that using our careers help desk team. But thank you so much, Adiya. This was really brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for interacting, for the questions in the Slido. We hope you guys enjoyed the session and you learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. I
And
appreciate
connect
it.
with us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We're all Energized Black everywhere. Thank you guys and have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
Yep.